Business for South Africa says the country will need to introduce, as you say, Sally, a combination of mandatory vaccine policies and incentives if it's to meet its national vaccination target in December. The desired vaccination rate, 300,000 plus, and the current rates are well below that. So says Martin Kingston, who is the steering chair of Business for South Africa. He joins us now. Martin, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. So when you look at the stats, Martin, how far are we from our desired vaccination levels and what should be done?
Well, good evening, Devon. We are a long way away from where we need to get to if we're going to be able to achieve the 70% that we're targeting by Christmas or the end of the year. At the moment, yesterday we did 205,000 vaccinations. In the last week, we've been below 200,000. We know that we can push that up well in excess of 300,000. We have the vaccines, we have the facilities. We can go to people's premises to the extent that it's necessary to vaccinate them. The issue is, of course, one of demand. We need to generate as much demand as we can as a country. The Boomer weekend kicked off a heightened level of demand, but we now need to have sustained vaccination well in excess of 200,000. And as you said, one of the ways that we can do that is by encouraging employers, indeed many establishments, to consider the possibility of mandatory vaccination, and then at the same time both positive and negative incentives allowing people into events, as we saw last night, negative incentives, refusing admission to all sorts of venues unless and until people are vaccinated. We think that the combination of those factors should certainly drive up the level of vaccination, hopefully to try and get to the targets that we've already agreed are necessary by the end of the year.
You're making the call as Business for South Africa, so you're not only seeing this as a health risk of the slow vaccination drive, but as an impact on our economic recovery as well, presumably.
Well, that's absolutely right. We're at the fortunate stage now of being at adjusted level 1, but we're anticipating a fourth wave probably in November, December, lasting for up to 2 months. And we've all had experience now of what happens over the past 18 months when we see the wave. And the answer is that we go into higher levels of restrictions, adjusted level 2, 3, or even 4. We hope that won't happen, particularly over the holiday season. But the consequence of that is to constrain economic activity, to dampen the possibility of real and sustainable growth, and of course to continue to threaten jobs in both the formal and the informal sector. We can't afford any of that as a country. And as a consequence of that, when we know that the vaccination program can be such a very significant tool in dampening down the effects of both transmission and indeed, therefore, of any fourth and subsequent waves, we need to accelerate that program so that we can indeed encourage economic activity to achieve its maximum potential.
Martin, you're making this reiterating call in a week where the Health Minister, Joe Phaahla, reaffirms in a parliamentary reply that government will not introduce laws around mandatory vaccinations. That puts a spin on things, doesn't it?
Well, I think that the government is understandably cautious about a matter that is fraught and potentially the subject of legal challenge. We recognise that as business. We've seen many other institutions in South Africa, most recently, of course, Wits University, UCT, has done the same, making it clear that they won't allow anybody on campus, whether it be students or teachers or service providers or visitors, without being able to demonstrate that they're vaccinated. What we're asking government to do is certainly not only to encourage vaccination, but to accept that mandates may well become the way of the future. We're seeing that certainly as well playing itself out around the world, both at a government level, national and federal, as well as within the private sector and across civil society. We actually think that it's going to have a very significant snowball effect. The more companies that introduce a vaccine mandate, the more establishments that refuse to allow admission without vaccination. We think that it'll catch on very quickly. We are, as I said, expecting legal challenge. We think that will be a good thing because we'll get clarity sooner rather than later. We believe that it's both the employer's responsibility as well as the employee's right to provide a safe working environment and to be protected from the risk of the virus. So we think that if indeed there's going to be a challenge, that should happen sooner rather than later. And perhaps the government will readjust or change its position after the passage of some of those legal processes.
Martin Kingston from Business for South Africa, thanks very much indeed for those insights.